Thank you, Norma. I think this has been a great conference, and I'd like to thank, on all of ours behalf, the great city of Birmingham for the really warm welcome they've given us. Over the course of this weekend, there's been about 2,000 of us here from all over England, from Scotland and from Wales, and I think all of us have felt the buzz of this dynamic city. And this is a city that was rebuilt by Labour, and we are determined that once again the Council will return to Labour. It's been an important conference at an important time as we build up our campaign for the elections on May the 1st. And at this conference, you have been strong and clear about what we all stand for. Strong and clear about what we've done in government, in local councils and internationally. And you've shown that you're strong and determined about Labour's plans for the future. On Europe, we know that with other European countries, we can do more to tackle climate change than we can on our own. We know that we can do more on international development, working with our European partners than we can on our own. And we know that we can't tackle cross-border crime on our own. And we know that with international economic turbulence, that would be exactly the wrong moment to turn our back on the other European economies. On Europe, the Tories' only approach is isolationism. Their only policy is a referendum, and just on that basis alone, they are unfit to run the country. At this spring conference, I think we have been very united. We want this country to be prosperous, and we want everyone to have a fair share in that prosperity. And that's what our Labour councillors and Labour council candidates are fighting for. That's what Labour's team in Europe is fighting for. It's what Labour in government is fighting for. And that's what London's Labour Mayor, Ken Livingstone, is fighting for. And London faces a clear choice on May the 1st. The man from Henley versus our Ken. And it's Ken who's given London more police, or Boris who's pledged to cut them. It's Ken who's transformed London public transport, or Boris who'd cut it back. So Boris, I've got news for you. You should stick to the jokes. Ken will stick to running London. And I think there's been a really good discussion across this weekend conference. Ed Miliband referred to Michaela Neal from Cardiff when she asked Gordon a question yesterday. She was here speaking at our conference, but she told us she was only 8 when Labour first came into government. And no, she's not a cabinet member yet. But she reminded us that we do need to tell people that when the Tories had power in government, before we got into government, there was no such thing as a Department for International Development. There was no national minimum wage. There was no commitment to ending child poverty, and as Alan Johnson has said, there were massive waiting lists for the health service. And before Gordon took over as Chancellor 10 years ago, the economy lurched from boom to bust, and people suffered. They suffered here in the West Midlands and in every part of the country. But whilst the better off could sit it out, the poorest suffered most. And we will never forget that under the Tories, people lost their jobs, they lost their homes, and they lost their hopes. And that's why we're determined that the economy must be strong, stable, and growing. And we must be in a strong position to face the international financial turbulence. And we will act to protect that economic stability whenever it is necessary, like we did on Northern Rock. And by the way, the Tories, having argued for less regulation of the financial services sector, their only policy on Northern Rock was to let it go bust. Again, through that episode alone, they showed they are not fit to run the country. As Gordon said yesterday, a strong economy is one that must draw on the talents and skills of all the people in this country, and that means everyone. It means women as well as men. It means black and Asian people as well as white people. It means disabled people too. Equality and opportunity underpin not just a fair society, but a strong economy too. You can't have a modern economy and a confident society if it's marred by misogyny, homophobia, or racism. And everyone in society must be able to play their part. So, as Gordon said here yesterday, we will have a strong new equality bill, because though we've made progress, we are not satisfied and we need to do more. And we need to have a fair and equal democracy too. That means everyone registered to vote, and it means everyone going out to vote. And it also means equality in our democracy, in who is represented in our councils and in Parliament. And it's Labour that's the only party of equal representation. Take here in Birmingham. Labour councillors in Birmingham reflect the diverse communities of Birmingham. 40% of our Labour group in Birmingham Council are black and Asian. But you know how many black and Asian councillors there are in the Tory group? Not one. Nearly half of our Labour members of the European Parliament are women. The Tories only have one Euro MP who's a woman, and she's leaving, and who could blame her? It's this party, this Labour Party, that's fought for equal representation, and it's because we fought for equal representation that we have 3 times more Labour women MPs than all the other parties put together. We have 3 times more black and Asian Labour MPs than all the other parties put together. And we have more black and Asian Labour councillors than all the other parties put together. But we are not complacent. We must and will go further. And we need more Asian women represented in our democracy. What Labour women do is they make sure that in government and in councils there's an understanding of the big changes in women's lives and in families. Now, the Tories, having voted against every measure that helps women and families, and having derided our fight against race discrimination, they tell us they have a newfound commitment to equality. Now, the truth is that that is as phony as their newfound commitment to tackling child poverty, their newfound commitment to the environment. But we've seen the photographs. We've seen David Cameron hugging huskies. We've heard about him hugging hoodies. No doubt he could find a tree that he could hug. But I say he better think twice before he tries to hug a feminist. Because us Labour women, we know all about men like Cameron. They are only after women for one thing, and one thing only, and that is their votes. And at our conference this weekend, we've discussed how we can do more to back up and support families. Now, this is not about telling families how to lead their lives, but it's actually backing them up. And that's why we extended maternity leave, and that's why we increased maternity pay and introduced paternity pay and leave, and that's why we set up children's centres and Sure Start, and backed up families with tax credits. But still, some women and families struggle as they try to balance work and home responsibilities. So we will give families more backing by giving parents of older children too the right to request flexible working, making sure that fathers know that they too have the right to request flexible working, and helping more families with the costs of childcare. And people have been saying at this conference, and as Joyce Nichol from Edinburgh South said to me yesterday, our society now is not just multicultural, it's multi-generational too. And for most families out there, it's granny as well as mum who's looking after the kids. And for many families out there, mum is looking after granny as well as looking after the kids. We must make sure, as Alan Johnson said earlier, that we have the very best services to support people as they grow older, vital health services, council services, and support from the voluntary sector. But we know that what matters most to older people, more than anything else probably, is the care and support of their family. And just as we're backing up families with children, we'll back up families who are caring for older relatives, for families who need a break, who need respite care, for people who want to care for their older relatives but don't want to have to give up their job, for people who perhaps want to change their hours to fit in with the care of a relative who's growing old. When our Carers Commission reports this summer, we will offer new entitlements to Britain's 6 million family carers. We've listened and we will act. We weren't afraid of being called the nanny state, and we won't be afraid of being called the granny state either. And you've listened to the concerns of your communities. You've spoken up about the need for better housing, more affordable housing to rent and to buy. And now that's a new priority at the heart of government. And you've listened and you've spoken up about concerns about policing. And on April the 1st, there will be neighbourhood policing in all areas. And you've listened and spoken up about the concerns about the opening hours of GPs. And now we're acting on that too. And although we know that globalisation brings opportunities for our economy, we also know it poses new challenges. And we must ensure that it doesn't make our society more unequal. So, as Gordon said yesterday, when he was talking about temporary and agency workers, we will ensure that migrant workers are not exploited and that permanent employees are not undermined, and we will make progress on this important agenda. Friends, the task ahead of us in the May election will be a challenge, but we're all up for the task. Ministers, MPs, local councillors, our London mayor, Labour students who have been so fantastic this weekend, and the trade unions, the whole of Labour's team. And I think that we'll leave this spring conference with a spring in our step, determined to expose the opportunism of the Tories, determined to expose the racism of the BNP, determined to build our party, and determined to campaign for what we believe in. Thank you all for being part of this great conference this weekend. Thank you for your ideas and for your commitment. Thanks to Chris Lenny and our hard-working team of party staff who've organised the conference this weekend. Thanks to all of our stewards, our own Red Army, and onwards to May the 1st. Thank you.